What's irony?
Yeah, I think it's when you say something that you actually mean the opposite.
Can you give me an example? I hate to put you on the spot.
Okay, like for example, if someone asks you how you're doing and you say, I'm doing great, but then in reality you're saying it with such a tone that you actually mean the opposite.
Wow, that's a really great. I talk about that a lot. So I teach pronunciation, and one of the things we talk about a lot with communication is when we talk, there's a semantic level and there's a syntactic level. And so the syntax is like your grammar, your vocab, your word choices, and then your semantics is the meaning. And so this is where sarcasm comes in, because sarcasm is where your syntax and your semantics disalign. Versus in general, when we communicate, we want them to line up. And that's where misunderstandings can happen, where your syntax says something and your semantics says another thing. That's where people get confused if it's not done intentionally. So we have to always kind of watch out for that. I think of irony too, just kind of backtrack a little bit, as like something, an unexpected result from an expected situation, and that tension that comes up. Like for instance, like driving home from the hospital and then getting hit by a car and going back to the hospital. Like that's like you're leaving the hospital, now you have to go back. Like that's where irony. Or if you watch a lot of Twilight Zone episodes are based all around irony, right? The episode that comes to mind for me is the librarian dude. He's the last human on Earth, and like he finds this huge library at the end and he just loves it, but then his glasses break and he can't see. So like that sort of tension and that irony. So it creates immediate tension. Because if you had to define a story, how would you define a story?
That has irony.
Just in general.
I usually, okay, what type of story? You mean like super short?
Just any story.
Okay.
How does something become not a story versus a story? What's the separation?
Well, there's good stories and there's stories that are boring.
Okay, we can talk more on that then. So what makes a boring story versus a good, quote unquote, good story?
Yeah, a boring story is something like a TV show where you can actually predict almost everything that happens, and it's just very somewhat cliche.
Okay, let's dive a little bit deeper, because I think this is also going to tie back to log lines as well. These are concepts we want to be thinking about. So like a comedy where it's just like everything is almost predictable, plus you have like people laughing, a laugh track that tells you where to laugh, and in reality when you listen to it, it's not really that humorous. I mean, that can be kind of ironic too. I mean, that's
Yeah.
You can see, like, sometimes you see that in dark comedies, like they'll add laugh tracks to moments that actually aren't very funny, and it's just like that tension as well. I think, well, let's talk more on that point. So a bad story you mentioned is kind of predictable and it's cliche. What's the problem with being predictable and cliche? Who cares? Why is that a problem?
If you want something that's higher quality, then having something that's not expected, makes it much more exciting.
Okay, so there's this aspect of surprise and excitement that's coming in. Okay, so I think this gets back to a concept of, a word we already used a bit today, it's tension. Stories have to have tension. There has to be conflict. Mm-hmm. There has to be. If there's no conflict, there's no story. There has to be some sort of issue to be resolved. Mm-hmm. And so I think, going back to what you mentioned about predictability and cliche, I think that the issue that comes up is there's no conflict because you already know what the resolution is.
Yeah. Right. It's kind of like, for example, a lot of people say that, I shouldn't say this, but they say that Jimmy Fallon is boring because he laughs at everything and he thinks everything's hilarious and funny, and like the best joke he's ever heard. So some people say he's fake, but that's almost because it's predictable. They know he's just going to laugh and do all that. But if he were to be a little bit more authentic and sometimes laugh very hard, if it really deserves that, merits it, and then sometimes not laugh as hard, or just keep, mix it up a bit. That way it seems more authentic and he's not as predictable.
Mm-hmm. So moving away from predictability, and we talked about this when we're delivering poems on stage. You were at that workshop. In our own writing, we have to move away from the things that people are going to expect us to do, or expect us to say, or expect us to act. And the more we're able to do that, but still be in a way that's logical and fits in the world we're building, the better. Talking about log lines, how can we apply this to log lines, and then bigger picture, how can we apply this to our poems? Irony is one device that we can turn to. I think most poems that really resonate with us when we read them have some degree of irony to them, even if it's just a small amount. So I was thinking about the story, or the movie Toy Story. If you had to give a log line for Toy Story, have you seen the first Toy Story?
No, I'm trying to think hard. I'm mixing it up with the other ones, but yeah.
They all kind of run together. That's fair. So I was kind of thinking about this, and I was like, what's the irony in Toy Story? And if I had to write a log line for Toy Story emphasizing the irony, what would it be? So this is what I came up with. So Woody, the main toy character, has to befriend the toy that he's jealous of in order to return to his owner. Okay, so the irony, in my opinion, is that tension where it's like, I don't like this person, but I need to befriend them in order to reunite and be in a better relationship. That's irony, and it's something that, notice it's not something that resolves immediately. It takes a long time, because it's like you have to establish the fact that, oh, I'm jealous of this person. Then you have to develop the interactions between them, because it's not like you just automatically lose that jealousy, right? You have to work at it and get to know the person, and then over time, so it's something that takes pretty much the entire movie to resolve.